Hey everybody, thank you for watching. Let me start my video by thanking the people who already subscribed to my channel. Hopefully many will follow. And even though the VIX, the volatility index, is extremely low, it is currently very busy in the investment management business. So I've been busy at work, and next to that I've been on a nice holiday to Italy, so I cannot complain too much. But that's the reason why this video is released a little bit later than planned. So let's not waste any more time and dive in. Today I'll focus on PagSeguro. I'll give it a score using my scorecard. We'll have a look at the fair value using the discounted cash flow analysis, and we'll have a look at the latest earnings reports which are released on the 25th. So PagSeguro is a Brazilian fintech business who focuses on payment solutions for businesses and consumers. In simpler terms, PagSeguro allows people and companies to send and receive payments online without the need for physical cash or traditional bank services. And Pags, and I will keep calling them Pags because I'm pretty sure I don't pronounce it correctly anyway. Pags offers four main services. They offer online payments, so they allow individuals and businesses to accept payments for goods and services online. They do that through a variety of channels, so including credit and debit cards, bank transfers, and digital wallets. They offer point-of-sale devices, where they offer devices that enable businesses to accept payments in person. And there is digital banking, where they offer a range of digital banking services, including online account management, mobile banking apps, and online saving accounts. And then there is lending, where Pags offers lending services to individuals and small businesses, providing them with access to credit and financing. So overall, PagSeguro services help individuals and businesses in Brazil to transact online, manage their finances, and access credit and financing. They earn revenue from fees, services, and interest on credit products. So I think that's already quite the ecosystem that they built in the recent years. Similar to this company, Adyen, Pags operates from one app, one platform, with leading technology and owning their own infrastructure. They used to focus primarily on micro merchant and small companies, and later they also shifted to focus their attention more on medium-sized companies, as they offer more profitability than the smaller ones. Now, Pags' tech setup allows them to easily integrate the payments and digital bank into one app and one platform, allowing both merchants and customers to access their cash quickly and easily. It also connects to Pix, which enables money transfers with just the need of a personal key. You could compare it a little bit to transactions with crypto, where you also only need a personal code. But here, Pix is owned by the central bank, and it has the purpose to reduce the amount of cash transactions and the need for ATMs. Now, Pags has great success in the recent years to grow the PagBank part of their business, and they became the second largest digital bank in Brazil. Only New Holdings, or Nubank, continues to be the leader, and I don't anticipate Pags ever catching up on them. I mean, they're growing too fast, and they're also expanding to a lot of other countries in Latin America. But being the second bank in Brazil should provide more than enough opportunities. Some additional information on Brazil. Now, the biggest economy and the largest country in Latin America. So Brazil is the seventh most populous country in the world with over 215 million people. So that also shows a lot of the importance of Brazil as an economy, and in my opinion, one of the more interesting emerging markets. In Brazil, we saw a huge spike in inflation, like anywhere else in the world, but in Brazil it was peaking at more than 12%. Which central bank nipped in the bud with big interest rate hikes for over 13%. Now the inflation has cooled down to below 4%, so I think they did a good job there. But the interest rates hike did hit the fintech companies hard, and PagSeguro was no exception for this. Now let me give you a quick overview of the dynamics and business outlook for Brazilian payments. So before the fintechs disrupted the Brazilian payment industry, the market was controlled by the incumbent platforms like Cielo, Rede, and GetNet. They charge high percentage take rates of a transaction, sometimes even up to 5% of a transaction, which is crazy if you think about it. And initially, those companies did not want to cut their prices because that would cannibalize their own profitability. However, this dynamic allowed both Pags and StoneCo to enter the market, and both increased their share to around 11%, their market share, at the end of 2022, so last year. While Cielo share declined from 40% to 26.8%, which is a big decline, but still they own around a quarter of the payment industry, of the payment market in Brazil. Now, Pag's strategy involved targeting micro merchants, so they're defined as retail businesses with a total payment value that is around $3,000 a month. Due to Shello's high prices and because Stoneco was more focusing on the medium-sized companies, most of these micro merchants had no payment processor before PagS, and PagS was the only important player in this segment. In Shello's Q1 for this year presentation, they have little presence in the long tail of micro merchants, and even the name is a little bit condescending. So this is the Q1 report of Shello. Here you can see that they mentioned the long tail segment. And if you look at the active client base, you can see that the amount of customers have dropped from 1.1 million in the first quarter of 2022 to now close to 1 million in the first quarter of 2023. So in 5 quarters, the active client base dropped with 110 million clients. Now the small and mid business segment and the large accounts stay more or less the same. So the drop is really in the long tail segment. Which is good news for PagSeguro because those 110 million clients most likely picked PagSeguro and took their business to them. If we look at other competitors of PagSeguro and compare them to them, so this is the Q1 report of Nubank. You see that the customers increased from 37.1 million in the first quarter of 2021 to now 79.1 million in the first quarter of 2023. So they grow with around 2.1x, really impressive growth numbers. If you look at PagSeguro, you can see that the PagBank clients have increased from 14.8 million in the first quarter of 2021 to 28.7 million in the first quarter of 2023, so close to 2x. Also impressive growth numbers, a little bit less than Nubank is doing. If you have a look at the other part of Nubank's Q1 report, so here you can see that they also started the expansion to other countries in Latin America. So they started in Mexico and in Colombia, and they mentioned that the target countries account for nearly 2/3 of the population of Latin America. Now, the population of Latin America is close to 700 million. Let's say that the adult population is around 450 million. This means that there's a big growth opportunity for both Nubank, but also for PagBank. If you look at their Brazilian customer penetration, you can see that Nubank already holds close to 50% of the customer penetration of Brazil. Now, if you also include the 30 million of PagBank in there, you can see that there's still growth left, but at some point the market is going to be fully penetrated. So the growth at some point will definitely slow down. So I think if PagSeguro also wants to keep growing, I think in the upcoming quarters, maybe let's say year and a half maximum, they also really need to start expanding to other countries in Latin America. It would make sense to go for the same countries as Nubank, since their current customer penetration is very low, and also Mexico and Colombia are 2 countries with a large population, but also with relatively good economic situation compared to other countries in Latin America. So it would make sense to go to those countries, but just in general, if you're talking about 450 million adult population in Latin America, there's still a big growth opportunity for both of them. There is one big difference between Nu Holdings and PagSeguro, and that is in the valuation. So if we look at PagSeguro, it currently has a market cap of around 3.2 billion. If you have a look at the market cap of Nu Holdings, you can see that they have a market cap of more than 34.8 billion. So they're more than 10 times more expensive than PagSeguro. And you have to keep in mind that Nu Holdings is really a digital bank, while PagSeguro also has the whole payment section, which is a lot more profitable to them. So you could argue that maybe Nu Holdings is overvalued, or you could argue that maybe PagSeguro is definitely undervalued. Also, you can see that they have been 6 times more expensive in the past, but we'll have a look at the fair value later on in this video. If you look at other competitors of PagSeguro, so this is the Q1 report of Stoneco. You can see the total payment volume of Stoneco. So in the Q1 22, they had 63.4 million which they increased to 78.9 million in the first quarter of 23. So impressive growth of 24.5%. Now Stoneco mainly had impressive growth in the whole year of 22. So as I mentioned before in my video, at the end of 22, both PagSeguro and Stoneco had around 11% of the market share of the payment volume in Brazil. Now you can see a small drop quarter for quarter, but let's compare that to PagSeguro. So here you can see the total payment volume. So from the first quarter of 22 to the first quarter of 23, they increased with 10% year over year, which now gives the total payment volume of 88.1 billion. So you can see that they start with a lot larger number than Stoneco did. So as I mentioned, that Stoneco had impressive growth in the full year 22. But a 10% growth year over year from PagSeguro is still impressive. And now with 88.1 billion compared to the 78.9 billion of Stoneco, you can see that they have 10 billion real more in payment volume. So the market share currently of PagSeguro is bigger than that from Stoneco. If we compare that to the one of Cielo, so the biggest competitor, at least the biggest incumbent competitor. So here you can see the total payment volume for Cielo. In the first quarter of 22, they had close to 200 billion real in total payment volume, and 1 year later, first quarter of 23, they had a little over 200 billion in total payment volume, which is an increase of 1.4%, which is definitely a lot less than both Stoneco with more than 24% and PagSeguro with 10%. So you can see that they're still bigger than both of the new entrants, but both Stoneco and PagSeguro are gaining market share. And as I mentioned, the 11% that they both have at the end of the quarter, you can see that they now already increased that again. The other thing to compare is the total finance volume. So you can see the finance volume of Cielo. So in the first quarter of 23, they had a total finance volume of 201 billion real. Now, if you compare that to PagSeguro, you can see the total finance volume is now 204 billion real. They had an increase of 51.8 billion year over year, an increase of 34% year over year. So very impressive. You can see that they're now already bigger in the finance volume than Cielo. So that's really impressive. Let's have a look at the other highlights of the Q1 23 report from PagSeguro. So in the initial remarks, they mentioned that they're going to move to one single brand. So currently they have PagBank and PagSeguro. Now they're going to move everything now under PagBank. I think that's good news. It better represents the offerings beyond payment for clients. But just in general, marketing under one brand is a lot more easy. Also cross-selling everything on the one brand is easier. So that's I think it's a smart move to do. If you look at the highlights, most of these already mentioned, but 28.7 million PagBank clients, total finance volume of 204 billion real, which is 34% year-over-year growth, and adjusted EBITDA of 787 million real, which is an 18% year-over-year growth. So good numbers. On the financial services, total deposits increased with 18.6 to 18.6 billion, so 66% year-over-year growth. Now, here they mention that they're going to move to one brand again. The PagBank clients we're going to look at, total finance volume. So the deposits increased with 7.4 billion, so from 11.2 billion real to 18.6 billion in the first quarter of 23. So with the current interest rate that is in Brazil of around 13%, they can already earn quite a lot of income on the interest of these deposits. So that's definitely a tailwind for them. The credit portfolio increased with 600 million, mainly on the payroll loan segment. The payments, so we had a look at the total payment volume, that increased to 88 billion. Now this part is also interesting. So if you look at the small and mid business segment, the total payment volume increased with 17%, excluding the nano merchants. including the nano merchant, is still increased 16%, so more or less the same. But if you look at the active merchants, excluding the nano merchants, it increased with 3%. But including the nano merchants, it decreased with 10%. So from 7.7 million active merchants to 6.9 in the first quarter of 2023. Now, this is mainly because they focused less on the nano merchants, and nano merchants are merchants that have a total payment volume of around $300 per month. So they're really small. They're not profitable at all, and in a lot of scenarios, they also cost the company money. So they decided to really focus on the small and mid business segments and on the larger accounts. So the nano merchants decided also to stop using PagSeguro, as you can see here, so a decrease of 10%. But then if you look at the active merchants that we have left, that PagSeguro has left, 6.9 million. Compared to the active client base of Shello that we saw before, they only have 1 million. So PagSeguro is around 7 times bigger. And if you have a look at the Stoneco report, you can see that the active clients they have is 1.25 million. So also compared to Stoneco, PagSeguro has a lot more merchants. These will be included in the discounted cash flow analysis. For the payments, the total revenue income increased with 10%, the gross profits only with 2%, but then for the financial services, interesting. So the total revenue income on the financial services decreased with 1%, but the gross profit increased with 274%. They say it's because of cost discipline, but I think it's more about provisions. Yeah. One part was definitely also because they decided to be stricter on the cost, but the provisions really carried this large increase. These are the most interesting part of the presentation. Quickly scroll through it to see if there's anything that I missed, but I think those are definitely the main points. Let's have a look on the stock price of PagSeguro, how it performed since the IPO in 2018, and also compare the valuation to the competitors. So the IPO was in 2018. The IPO price was $21.50. Immediately after, it went up to close to $30. And afterwards, the stock price has been super volatile. Up to close to 40, dropped again to 17, up again to 50. During the COVID lows, now here it says 16, but intraday, it was even a lot lower than that. And then afterwards, during the whole bull run in 2021, it was even above $62. Currently it's around $10. This could mean that potentially now the company is very undervalued, or that during the whole bull run, the company was very overvalued. At least the company itself has been delivering on revenue growth and on profitability. So let's see later on the valuation how they're doing on that. At least the beta of this company is extremely high. If you look at the total enterprise value EBITDA multiple for the next 12 months. So during the IPO, they were above 25, and that's been also very volatile, same as the stock price. During COVID low, the multiple dropped to close to 7, and currently it's around 5.3. If you include some competitors, so we have Stoneco, they had the IPO later than PagSeguro. Stoneco was a little bit more popular during the whole bull run. Was also pushed quite a lot on Fintech, I have to say. So even there, the multiples increased to 50 plus. While the from PagSeguro also were 34 plus, so it's both very steep. Currently, the one from Stoneco is 3.7 compared to the 5 total enterprise value EBITDA multiple of PagSeguro. Shello have also been quite stable. There's also less growth in the company. Then we have dLocal, which is a payment company from Uruguay, also focusing on Latin America, but they also focus on Africa and already in the Middle East. Now their IPO was in the bull run of 21, so the valuation is ridiculous. Close to 200 total enterprise value EBITDA at that time. But now they've dropped also to, let's say, 16.5. Still 3 times more than Pax, but at least it came down from the 200 craziness. And then we have Adyen, which I think is probably the best payment company in the world, at least stock listed. I know in the US you also have Stripe, which is very popular, but I think Adyen is, well, let's say at least in the top 2 then. That's also the reason that they always are listed at a premium. In 21 they were close to 115, and currently still there are, let's say, 45. So if you look at all 5 of them, you can see that StoneCo 3.6, Cielo 4.4, PAX 4.7, so they're quite close to each other. dLocal and Adyen are definitely a lot more, with dLocal 4 times more, Adyen even close to 10 times more. Then if you have a look at the gross profit, so the total enterprise value gross profit for the last 12 months, to look in 5 years, so it's more or less since the IPO of PagSeguro. So they went from, let's focus first on PagSeguro. Close to the IPO, it was close to 31, dropped to 6.5, went all the way up again to 40 plus. It's also a crazy run. And then now currently it is, I mean, let's say very low at 2.6 times the enterprise value gross profit multiple. If you include the competitors, so we have StoneCo, Cielo, Adyen, and dLocal. So if you look now at the end, you can see that on this multiple, PagSeguro is valued the cheapest. So we have PagSeguro at 2.5, StoneCo 3.6, Cielo 4.7, dLocal 19, and Adyen at 40. So here, Adyen is even valued more than, let's say, close to 15 times the total enterprise value gross profit multiple than PagSeguro. So at least you can see that the StoneCo and PagSeguro in this multiple are both quite cheap. But we'll see later in the fair value if that is actually also the case. And on to the fun part. We're gonna start scoring PagSeguro using my Stockman Investing Scorecard. Scorecard consists of 5 sections. We have the management financials, management culture, Moat, potential, and a risk section. The total amount of points you can get is 120, and that will be converted into a score. So first, the debt section. The debt of PagSeguro, look at the total debt equity ratio, which is very low, 2.7%. Total debt EBITDA, 0.05, so they have almost no debt, especially compared to their EBITDA. And the actual number is 65 million only. It's nothing for a company like PagSeguro, so I get some full points here, 8 points. Then if you look at the current ratio, as you already quickly saw, that's also positive, 1.46 if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 1.46 for the current ratio. Full points here, 3 points. Then the return on invested capital. The return on invested capital for PagSeguro is an impressive 37.6% for last year, which is really a great number. I can make it even a little bit longer. So they've always been return on capital positive. The trend, I would say, is growing. They had one big number in 2017, but if you take that one out, the trend is definitely increasing. And with last year, yeah, impressive 37.6%. So getting full points here, 12 points. And in my head, I'm going to give them a bonus point because, well, the 37% is really impressive. The direction of the return on invested capital, now, as we just saw, you could argue it's stable, but no, I'm going to give the full points for growing. Then free cash flow. Let's see if the free cash flow positive. Last year they had a free cash flow of 464 million. They haven't been positive all these years, but well, last year they were, and only in 2018 they were free cash flow negative of 470 million. But last year definitely positive. Give them full points here, 2 points. Then the free cash flow percentage of the EBITDA. So have a look at, let's say 464 million free cash flow positive. Then the EBITDA is 1.17 billion. Now, gives it around 40%. It is below the 45, so a lot of the EBITDA is lost and is not converted into free cash flow. So I'm going to give them -3 for this one. Then looking at the capital expenditure percentage of the free cash flow. The free cash flow we already saw. I have to look at the capital expenditure. So capital expenditure last year was 207.3 million. So again, it's below here. The cash flow of 364 gives it 45%. So that's in the 40 to 65 range, which is 0 points. It gives it a total for this section of 24 points, which is actually not a bad score. And as I already said, the return on invested capital, which is well, by far the most important one in this section, of 37%, they get a bonus point. Then the management culture, so the CEO experience and track record. Now the CEO of PagSeguro is Alexandre Magnani. He's also in the thumbnail of this video. He's the CEO of PagSeguro since October 2022, so not that long, but he has already a lot of experience in the payment section. So he also worked 15 years for Mastercard International, which is together with Visa, of course, the most well-known and most profitable business in this segment. I've seen quite some videos with him already. There's not that much, because he's of course quite new, but everything I've seen so far is positive. So I'm not going to get the full points. He's not a founder, but yeah, with so many Mastercard experience and also already his whole track record, I'm going to give him the 4 points. If you think that's too much, feel free to change it for yourself. As a CEO to act with integrity, what I've seen so far, I do trust him. I mean, there's not that much to find yet. Also, some things are, of course, in Portuguese, so I cannot follow everything, but the interviews that I've seen in English, and no reason to deduct any points here. So 0 points. CEO pay compensation is reasonable and based on long-term success, stock-based compensation. Now, first have a look at the stock-based compensation. Usually for companies outside of the US, the stock-based compensation is immediately a lot less crazy. And also here, stock-based compensation, only 24 million. And we saw what the EBITDA was. So the EBITDA of more than 1 billion. We have a free cash flow of 464 million, and then a stock-based compensation of 24. So that's great. That's what you like to see. Also dived into the SEC filing for PagSeguro. So here we have, maybe it's a little bit small, but I will read you through it. So here the management compensation. The aggregate compensation paid to executive officers for PagSeguro Brazil in 2022 was 21.4 million real. Now that's about $4 million for the entire executive team, which is definitely okay. And then if you look a little bit further, so here, since the beginning of the LTIP goals until March 31st, a total of 2.3 million Class A common shares were delivered to certain members of our management. So that's since the beginning of these goals. Now they start, if I'm saying correctly, from 2018. So in 5 years' time, they delivered 2.3 million Class A shares. Now that's not that much, I would say. So that's let's say 400,000, a little bit more. No, let's say 400,000 per year. Now, if the current stock price, that's also definitely not a problem. And then there's one other section. So at March 31st, 2023, a total of 5.5 million Class A common shares were delivered without cash. Now, also to some members of the management, and it's still part of the IPO. Now, this is all a long-term incentive plan. So it was for people that were there at since the establishment of the LTIP goals of December 2018, so that they stay with the company. So that's 5.5 million, plus the other 2.3 million. I think that's all reasonable, as you also seen here in the stock-based compensation and the base salary. So I would say that the CEO pay compensation is reasonable and based on long-term success. Yeah, I'm going to give them full points here. Not usually do this, but yeah, it's good to see that a company is not just trying to benefit too much and dilute the shareholders. Skin in the game, ownership. Well, the management doesn't have a lot of ownership. I found that the entire management team together has a couple percent, but definitely not more than 4%. So they're gonna get 0% here. The management ratings. Have a look at the last door. The recommend to a friend, 8.6. Overall, 4.2. Now, the CEO is not there yet because the CEO is also not that long in charge. But the trend itself is I would say increasing and stable. The other thing is senior management here, but yeah, so to say they had quite a lot of changes in the management, so that's that number is not really relevant anymore. And also here CEO approval, it's not valid. So management rating, overall score, CEO approval, not all of the things you can find there. The overall score and recommend to a friend is positive. CEO approval, not yet. I'm gonna deduct only 1 point for that, so 6 points. Mission statement. Let's have a look at the mission. So now it's clear there immediately. Our mission: disrupt and democratize the access of financial services and payment solutions in Brazil, providing a simple, safe, affordable, and digital ecosystem to merchants and consumers. A little bit long, but at least it's clear. So is it simple? Yeah, it is simple. What they mean is inspirational. Yes, also, does it provide optionality? They do mention Brazil in there, which is something that I would prefer that they would focus more on the whole Latin America, or maybe even other areas outside of Latin America. So not that much optionality, even though they should have it, but deducting 1 point. Then let's see if there is insider buying or don't open yet, but Pamela Anderson, always important. Then PAX. So there have been 0 transactions, no buy transaction, no sell transactions, insiders. Well, at least there's no selling. Let's say the positive also is not owned by any guru or hedge funds. At least the ones that are followed here in Dataroma. So non-weak strong, it's 0 points. We guess it's 17 points for the management and culture section, which is okay. It's not that great. If you look at where they lose some points, actually it's in skin in the game ownership. So yeah, that's what you get with new CEOs. They have 0%. They might increase it over time, but for now they have no skin in the game. So 17%, and looking at them, also not very likely to increase a lot. Maybe on the insider buying and guru buying, that could be that if especially the new CEO starts buying some, that would definitely be positive. But for now, 17 points. Then onto the Moat section. So network effects, product ecosystem. I thought about this, and I think the ecosystem for PagSeguro is definitely part of the Moat. They're the only one. So if you look at Shello, the CEO of Shello mentioned that they could look into a banking license, but they don't have it yet. If you look at Stoneco, they also don't have a banking license yet. They tried to take a part in Interbanco, but also that stake in Interbanco they already sold again. So PagSeguro is the only one with both a banking license and focus on the payment industry. And if you then look at new holdings or new bank, they are only a digital bank, so they are not part of the digital payment. So I think since they're the only player who's on both sides, they're definitely creating a nice product ecosystem. And since they're the only one, is definitely also part of the Moat. So I'm going to give them 6 points for this. Switching cost. For the banking sections, I mean, it is the bank, right? So if you think for yourself, is it really that hard to switch from banks? Not so much, I think, as a consumer. Maybe if you're a merchant, when the bank is more incorporated into your business, a little bit more. But I think if you think about the payment side, so if you think about the point of sales devices that they have, and all the merchants that have a PagSeguro into their business, and also because since they have the banking license and the payment side, I think the switching cost is definitely there. So we get them 6 points for switching cost. Then a durable cost advantage. So they do own their own infrastructure. The skill is increasing. So with the skill increasing, they should be able to provide, well, lower cost. But if you also look at how Shello did in the past, they also always had the big skill, and also they have been surpassed by Stoneco and by PagSeguro. And next to that, if you look at Stripe, if you look at Adyen, their skill is a lot bigger than the one from PagSeguro. So if you would give them points here, it would be because it would be a lot more impossible for new entrants to enter the market, because, well, I don't think it's going to happen. You have the current players in the payment industry in Brazil, and I think people from Latin America makes sense if they would prefer to do business with also companies from Latin America. So for that reason, I don't think they have to fear too much from Adyen and from Stripe. But that being said, the skill of PagSeguro is almost the same as Stoneco, a little bit more, but also compared to Shello, they're still lower than that. So up to you to give them some points. I'm going to give them 0 here. Then the intangibles, so premium brand, patents, trade secrets, comes a little bit again to being the only player with both the banking license and focusing on the payment sector. This gives quite a unique deal in Brazil to the merchants. So for that one, I think they have built quite a premium brand. So I'm giving them 3 points here. The counter positioning, so competitors would be harmed to adopt business model, 0 points, and also for the last one, corner resource, 0 points. Gives us the Moat of 15, which is not that much. I could give it a little bit more points for the product ecosystem and the network effect, but at the end of the day, it's also a bank, right? And if you all look at ourselves, okay, we might not switch that easily from bank to a bank because it takes some time and effort, but it's also not that much effort to do it at the end, right? If you really have an incentive to do it, you're gonna switch banks. So it makes sense that their Moat is not that strong. Get them 15 points for this. So the potential, I would say, is really big, right? Because in Latin America, so they have still a lot of growth potential in both digital banking and in the payment sector in Brazil, but also in other countries in Latin America. So for that, even though they don't mention it in their mission statement, they could definitely go abroad. Give them 6 points here. Then for customer concentration, no deduction. Industry disruption, also not. They are the disruptor. And then the binary event, also not. It gives it a total of 62 points and a score of 71, which is I could invest in a company. I don't see the score increasing a lot. Management culture section is difficult. Financial section, they scored really well already. Probably, I think in the upcoming, maybe not quarters, but let's say a year and a half from now, their free cash flow percentage of the EBITDA would change, so that would be then at least a 1, maybe even a 3, so that's 6 points more than they would already have a score of an amount of point of 68, and probably also a score that's in the 75 range. But overall, definitely not bad. And as I mentioned before, they get a bonus point for the return on invested capital being so high. So that is a scorecard. Then on to the last section of this video, the discounted cash flow analysis, where we're going to calculate the fair value of PagSeguro. First, the revenue. The average growth rate of the revenue was 53.4%, leading from 122 million in 2014 to close to 3 billion last year. Going forward, I think this number is going to decrease a lot for several reasons. One of them is the high inflation rates, or the high interest rates more. That's slowing down the Brazilian economy, and also in the recent years they focused more on growth and less on profitability, even though they were profitable. But going forward, the focus is going to be more on profitability and less on growth. If we look at the analyst estimates, they also have for this year a growth of 8.7%, and in the years after ranging from, let's say, 13 to 7.5%. Which gives us a total revenue by the end of 2032 of more than 8 billion. The gross profit margin average is 47.5%, was 56% in 2014. Last year it was 51.3%. I have that as 50% for this year, next year, and then have it slowly decreasing over the years. Mainly because at some point the Brazilian market is going to be fully penetrated, and they also have to compete with their competitors on a price action. So that's going to eat a little bit in the gross profit margin. The selling, G&A, and marketing costs, the trend is decreasing over the years, so it was close to 41% in 2014. Last year was 17%, and this trend continuing all the way to 15.9% by the end of 2032. The EBITDA margin has increased to 40.3% last year, and have this for the upcoming year as 14.5%. And then slowly decreasing, mainly also because of the gross profit margin. The free cash flow margin going forward has it 15% and then increasing to 25%. The shares outstanding, here there was quite a big increase, but that's because of the IPO. And then the years after was small increases, and last year they even bought back around 1% of the outstanding shares. So going forward, you could argue that they will buy back more shares, especially with the amount of EBITDA that they have and the free cash flow that they're producing. But have it stable at, let's say, 329 million. But feel free to lower that amount if you think that's more reasonable. The cash I have increasing to 620 million, 6% growth rate. The debt I have increasing to 177 million. Here the return on invested equity and the return on invested capital, both impressive numbers. And then at the end, the enterprise value EBITDA multiple. So this multiple has been around 20 for several years, but last year it decreased all the way to 2.2, which to me the case shows that last year was heavily undervalued. It gives the average of 26.3, but it was also because of the high growth that they were producing. So going forward, the growth is going to be a little bit less, or quite some less, which gives that I use a enterprise value EBITDA terminal value of 12. So if we look at the numbers, what we'll get out of the analysis. So the enterprise value by the end of 2032 will be 32.4 billion, according to the analysis. The less debt plus cash gives the market cap of close to 33 billion. There is a share price of close to $100. Now, if you look at the current price of 10.27, so let's say 10, is around a 10x from here. But of course, we need to discount the future cash flows using a discount rate. So the discount rate I use is 20.3%. I think it's the highest discount rate I use for all the companies that where I use this analysis for. And the reason why it is so high is because, well, we saw that the stock is very volatile, which gives the high beta. beta of 1.61. The 10-year UST bill is currently 3.8. The beta adjusted equity risk premium, so it's basically the beta multiplied by 5.5, gives it a 8.86 discount rate. Size premium, size is a little bit above 2 billion. And then the specific company risk, this is for your own judgment. I have it geographic risk, 2% because it's in Latin America. I have 3% because of a lot of the competitors. Gives it a total discount rate of 20.32%, with a total terminal value multiple of 12 and a margin of safety of 25%, gives it the buy price, a fair value of $13.25. Current price 10.27, which means that PagSeguro is currently undervalued close to 30%. That brings us to the end of this video. I think the score we gave is 71 in combination with being undervalued 30% and then even the really impressive return on invested capital. I think it would be not a bad idea to invest in PagSeguro. Of course, always do your own diligence. This is not a financial recommendation, but full disclosure, I do own shares of PagSeguro myself. I bought them recently, I think a couple months ago, around $8.50, so already have a nice little run up. I'm not planning on selling any of them anytime soon. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment in the comment section, and if you could do me a favor, subscribe to my channel. That would really help me out. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next video. Bye.